So until now we have seen the peritoneum 1 and 2 where we have learned what is peritoneum, what are the layers of the peritoneum that are parietal and visceral, what is peritoneal cavity, and then we have traced the peritoneum vertically and transversely. We have seen the subdivisions of the peritoneum as greater sac and lesser sac. Going on. Apart from dividing the peritoneum into a greater and lesser sac, the peritoneal cavity can also be divided by means of this transverse colon and transverse mesocolon into supracholic compartment and an infracholic compartment. That is, the cavity of the peritoneum which is above this transverse mesocolon and transverse colon. This whole thing is the supracholic compartment. This brown and bluish things what you are looking at here, they are the supracholic compartment, and this whole yellow thing what we are looking at beneath the transverse colon and its mesocolon, this whole yellow thing is the infracholic compartment. So the peritoneal cavity is divided into a supracholic, and whatever it is beneath the transverse colon and its mesocolon becomes the infracholic compartment. In this picture, we will be moving on to a great detail about the supracholic compartment and its subdivisions. The supracholic compartment. So this is the transverse mesocolon. So whatever is lying up above this one, this is the supracholic compartment, which in turn comprises the peritoneum, which is enclosing the liver, stomach, and the spleen, and the various other organs, especially the retroperitoneal, pancreas, the kidneys, and everything will be lying behind these organs. This supracholic compartment is once again divided by means of the ligaments of the liver, especially the falciform ligament. The white thing what you are looking at here is the site of the attachment of the falciform ligament, if you remember it. And even the other various ligaments like the coronary and the triangular ligament divide the supracholic compartment once again into 6 spaces, and these spaces are lying beneath the diaphragm. So this is the site of diaphragm. So this whole thing is the abdomen. Above will be the thoracic cavity. Dividing them will be diaphragm. As these spaces are lying beneath the diaphragm, they are also called as subphrenic spaces. So altogether there are 6 subphrenic spaces. There are 3 on to the right side of falciform ligament. This is falciform ligament. On to the right of falciform ligament, we have 3 subphrenic spaces. On to the left of falciform ligament, you will be having 3 more subphrenic spaces. Now let us see what are those subphrenic spaces. Now, as I told you, there are 6 subphrenic spaces. Subphrenic, phrenic indicates diaphragm. So they are beneath the diaphragm. They are very important previously because they are the most common sites of the location of common sites of pus formation, which in turn leads to abscess formation. So subphrenic spaces are important because they are common sites, especially important for the subphrenic abscess formation. So you need to know about them. So moving on, there are 3 subphrenic spaces on the right side. They are right anterior intraperitoneal compartment, right posterior intraperitoneal compartment, right extraperitoneal compartment. The 3 on to the left are left anterior intraperitoneal compartment, left posterior intraperitoneal compartment, left extraperitoneal compartment. We will be learning in great detail about these, each of these subphrenic spaces. It may be asked as a question, so do concentrate. So in this picture, we will be learning about the right subphrenic spaces. Let us start with the first one, right anterior intraperitoneal compartment. So this one, this is liver present anterior to it. This one is the right anterior intraperitoneal compartment. Present posterior to the liver, this space is right posterior intraperitoneal compartment. So this ligament, if at all you remember it, this one is the superior coronary ligament. This one is the inferior coronary ligament, and this posterior surface where there is no peritoneal covering to the liver is called as the bare area of the liver, and the space present here is nothing but right extraperitoneal compartment. So the bare area of liver, which is nothing but the right extraperitoneal compartment. Now let us talk about the boundaries of right anterior intraperitoneal compartment. So the space what we are looking at, this one is the right anterior intraperitoneal compartment. So the anterior boundary is diaphragm and anterior abdominal wall. So this one, the brown thing what you are looking at is the diaphragm and anterior abdominal wall. Posteriorly, this one is the anterior surface of the liver. Superior here is the superior coronary ligament. Above, that is inferior, as you can see it here, it doesn't have any boundary, it is open and is even continuous with the right posterior intraperitoneal compartment. The other boundaries which we can't appreciate here are on the left side, it is the right side of the falciform ligament, and onto the right side it communicates with the right posterior intraperitoneal compartment once again. Now moving on to the next compartment, this one, right posterior intraperitoneal compartment. It is nothing but our hepatorenal pouch of Morrison. The boundaries are anteriorly this one. So this one is posterior inferior surface of the liver. Posteriorly, peritoneum covering the front of right kidney and even the suprarenal gland. And behind them we have the bit of diaphragm. Now above this one is the posterior layer or inferior coronary ligament, and below is transverse colon. So below is the transverse colon and its mesocolon. So this one is the transverse mesocolon. So I repeat, anteriorly it is the posterior inferior surface of the liver. Posteriorly it is the right kidney, anterior surface, suprarenal gland and the diaphragm. Above this one is the inferior coronary ligament. Below is the transverse colon and its mesocolon. Now the important things to notice here are communications of this right posterior intraperitoneal compartment. If you remember it, onto the left side we have the epiploic foramen. So epiploic foramen is nothing but a communication in between the greater sac and the lesser sac, and that epiploic foramen directly opens up into this hepatorenal pouch of Morrison. So on to the left side, hepatorenal pouch of Morrison by means of the epiploic foramen is continuous with the cavity of the lesser sac. Along the sharp inferior border, so this is the sharp inferior border of the liver. So this right posterior anterior intraperitoneal compartment is continuous with the right anterior intraperitoneal compartment along this sharp inferior border. So apart from these two spaces on the right side, we have one more space, that is right posterior extraperitoneal compartment. Extraperitoneal, that is, it is outside of the peritoneal cavity and is not covered by the peritoneum. Such areas anywhere in the whole of the abdomen are called as bare areas. So in case of liver, the biggest bare area is present in between the superior coronary ligament and the inferior coronary ligament. So this becomes the bare area of the liver, and thus that is the right extraperitoneal compartment. So the boundaries of that compartment are anteriorly it is the superior coronary ligament, posteriorly it is the inferior coronary ligament, onto the left side, though not visible here, it is the inferior vena cava. On to the right side, the fusion, they are not as parallel as they are looking here. If you take a section a little bit more on to the right of this level, the superior and inferior coronary ligament will be joining each other, forming a right triangular ligament. So the boundary of the bare area, that is our right extraperitoneal compartment, on the right side is fusion of the two layers of the coronary ligament to form a right triangular ligament. Above, once again, it is the diaphragm. This is the diaphragm, and below it is the posterior surface of the liver. Thereby, we finish all the three right subphrenic spaces, one right anterior intraperitoneal, right posterior intraperitoneal, and this one here is the right extraperitoneal compartment. Now once again, the same spaces in a little bit different view. So this is the superior coronary ligament. Beneath it, the space what we are looking at is the right anterior intraperitoneal compartment, or simply space. Now behind it, if you look at it, it is right posterior or right subhepatic space. Now this one is the anterior surface of left triangular ligament. This one becomes the left anterior subphrenic space, and this one is the falciform ligament attaching itself onto the anterosuperior surface of the liver. Now moving on to the left spaces. Onto the left side we have three spaces once again: left anterior intraperitoneal, left posterior intraperitoneal, and left extraperitoneal. Now starting with the left anterior intraperitoneal. So the space what we are looking at here, this is the left anterior intraperitoneal. The boundaries are anteriorly anterior abdominal wall, the posteriorly it is the liver. Above this ligament what you are looking at is the left triangular ligament, and onto the right side, do not depicted here, it is the falciform ligament. Left side it is open, and below, as you can see here, once again it is an open space. This whole thing is the left subphrenic space, anterior intraperitoneal space. Now left posterior intraperitoneal space is this whole space present on the left side beneath the liver. So this whole lesser sac becomes the left posterior intraperitoneal compartment. We will be discussing this one in great detail because this is important as a question and in clinical practice. So we have to know everything about it. Just hang on. Before moving on, we have one more compartment, that is the left extraperitoneal compartment. It is the least important of all the subphrenic spaces. Merely it is a loose connective tissue around the upper pole of the left kidney and left suprarenal gland. So this is the left kidney. It is just a small space present here just at the upper part of the left kidney, that is left extraperitoneal compartment. Now so in this picture, once again I want to show you the same things. The left side we have the left anterior intraperitoneal. In order to look at the left posterior intraperitoneal, you have to remove all these organs which are present anteriorly, that is the liver and the stomach. So in this next picture what we are looking at is the lesser sac, which is nothing but left posterior intraperitoneal compartment. Now this is the lesser sac which is communicating with the hepatorenal pouch of Morrison, which is present here. So this is right anterior intraperitoneal. This is the right posterior intraperitoneal, that is nothing but hepatorenal pouch of Morrison. So lesser sac is communicating with this hepatorenal pouch of Morrison. The space present in between is nothing but epiploic foramen. The other thing you can see here is hepatorenal pouch of Morrison is continuous along the right paracolic gutter so as to communicate with the pelvic cavity. Now, before discussing in detail about the lesser sac, let us finish off the infracolic compartment. So until now, we have seen the supracolic compartment, in which we have discussed almost all subphrenic spaces. Now we are going on to the infracolic compartment. Infracolic. So it is beneath the colon. The colon in question here is the transverse colon and its mesocolon. So whatever peritoneal cavity is beneath it, we are calling it as infracolic compartment. This whole thing is the infracolic compartment. In the infracolic compartment, this oblique line represents the root of the mesentery. So mesentery is nothing but a peritoneal fold which is enclosing the coils of jejunum and ileum. So the root of the mesentery here divide the whole of the infracolic compartment into two spaces once again. This is the right one, right infracolic space. On to the left side we have the left infracolic space. Right infracolic and left infracolic. Look at the right infracolic space. The boundaries are above transverse colon and its mesocolon. On to the right side, we have the ascending colon. On to the left side, it is the right layer of the mesentery. So the apex lies somewhere here at the ileocecal junction. So it is triangular and it is completely closed. And hence any infection by from the pelvic cavity or anywhere else cannot reach onto the right infracolic space. Now let us look at the left infracolic space. This is the left infracolic space. Boundaries are above once again transverse colon. Onto the left side we have the descending colon, and onto the right side we have the left layer of mesentery. The thing to notice here is called most quadrilateral in shape and it is open. As you can see the arrow here, it is open, and hence any infections from the pelvic cavity can reach the left infracolic space but not the right infracolic space. One more point, this arrow here, this one on to the sides of ascending column, this one is the right paracolic gutter. On to the sides of the descending column, this is the left paracolic gutter. So the right paracolic gutter above is continuous with the hepatorenal pouch of Morrison, which in turn is continuous with the lesser sac. So any infection from lesser sac can pass on to the hepatorenal pouch of Morrison, from where it can pass through the right paracolic gutter, which in turn can reach onto the pelvic cavity. So now, most important of all the saphenous spaces, lesser sac. So lesser sac is nothing but left posterior intraperitoneal compartment. It is a diverticulum of the greater sac, otherwise called as omental bursa. So this pink thing, whole of the peritoneal cavity, is the greater sac. Only this blue thing is the lesser sac. It is present mostly behind the stomach and hence it provides an area for the enlargement of the stomach whenever food is present within the stomach, and hence it is also called as omental bursa. The lesser sac and the greater sac are not communicating with each other anywhere except at one point, that is our epiploic foramen. The shape of the lesser sac is like a hot water bag. Rather than the bottle, it is the hot water bag. So whenever we are in some pain, we take some hot water bag. Remember, the only difference in between the shape of the lesser sac and a hot water bag is the opening will be present more onto the right side rather than at the top. So we have to know in detail about the boundaries of this lesser sac. So let us talk about the anterior boundary, that is the anterior wall of lesser sac. This blue thing what you are looking at, this is the lesser sac. This whole thing or what becomes the boundaries of anterior boundaries of lesser sac. So let us start from above downwards. So peritoneum covering the caudate lobe of the liver. Next, posterior layer of the lesser omentum. Next, posterior inferior surface of the stomach. And next is the second layer of greater omentum. These are the structures forming the anterior wall of lesser sac. Next, the posterior wall of lesser sac. This one, once again going from below upwards. So we have stopped at the second layer of greater omentum, anterior wall. So the posterior wall starting point is third layer of greater omentum. Next, anterior superior surface of transverse colon. Next, upper layer of transverse mesocolon. Next is the anterior surface of body of pancreas. Next, though not shown in this picture, it is the left kidney and the left suprarenal gland which become the posterior wall of lesser sac. Apart from that, even the diaphragm becomes the posterior wall of lesser sac. Now in this picture, so we are not looking at the lesser sac because the anterior wall of the lesser sac is covering it. So we have removed the stomach in order to see the cavity of lesser sac, right? So this is stomach which has been lifted up. So what we are looking at is the posterior wall cavity and the structures which are forming the posterior wall of lesser sac. Transverse colon, transverse colon, pancreas, the left kidney, left suprarenal gland and the diaphragm become the posterior wall of lesser sac. Now, the upper margin of the lesser sac, it is from the peritoneal reflection from the diaphragm onto caudate lobe. This is the caudate lobe of the liver. So, this is the upper margin of liver. So, peritoneal reflection from the diaphragm onto the caudate lobe of liver at this point becomes the upper margin of the lesser sac. Right margin. So right margin from above downwards, from here it will be going like this. So from here it is, can see here it is deficient. So the upper part of the right margin is by the epiploic foramen. So what you are looking at is the epiploic foramen. This is the right free margin of the lesser omentum. So it is epiploic foramen here, and then going downward the right margin is formed by, it corresponds to the right free margin of the greater omentum. Here let us talk about the left margin even. Left margin is this one. So it corresponds to the left free margin of the greater omentum. Here the left margin is by the in between, the space in between the gastrosplenic and glenorenal ligaments, and much above this yellow ligament what you are looking at is the gastrophrenic ligament. All these three things put together become the left margin of lesser sac. From below upwards, it is the left free margin of greater omentum, and then the space in between the gastrosplenic and glenorenal ligament. Much further above, it is the gastrophrenic ligament here, which become the left margin of lesser sac. Now the lower margin. Before puberty, this is greater omentum. First layer, second layer, third layer, fourth layer. So before puberty, we have a cavity of the lesser sac cavity. It moves on in between the second and third layers of greater omentum. So this inferior margin of the greater omentum becomes the lower margin of lesser sac. But after puberty, the second and third layers of the greater omentum, they fuse with each other, and hence the cavity of the lesser sac is only until here, that is after puberty. Now subdivisions of lesser sac. These red things what you are looking at here, we have two peritoneal folds inside the cavity of the lesser sac. We have a left gastropancreatic fold formed by left gastric artery, a right gastropancreatic fold formed by common hepatic artery. By means of these peritoneal folds, the whole of the lesser sac cavity is divided into a upper part. The whatever is above these two pancreatic folds become the superior recess. Whatever is beneath these two gastropancreatic folds, it becomes the inferior recess, and whatever cavity of the lesser sac goes near to the spleen is become the splenic recess. Now the part of the lesser sac which is going behind the lesser omentum and behind the liver, this part is what we call as superior recess. The part of the lesser sac in between the second and third layers of the greater omentum, this becomes the inferior recess. Now let us see what is splenic recess. In this cross-sectional view, this blue thing is the lesser sac. The part of the lesser sac in between the splenic ligament, this one splenorenal or glenorenal ligament, this recess is what we call as splenic recess of lesser sac. So the part of the lesser sac in between these two ligaments in relation to the spleen is called as splenic recess of lesser sac. So why are we talking this much about the peritoneum? So we need to know what are the functions of peritoneum, right? Movement of viscera. So it provides a smooth slippery surface by means of the little bit of peritoneal fluid which is present in the peritoneal cavity. It provides a smooth and slippery surface for the movement of all the viscera which are present in the abdomen. Next, protection of the viscera. By means of the mesothelial lining and even the peritoneal cavity in which there are various macrophages, mast cells and lymphocytes, it protects the viscera from infections. Nutrition and innervation. So by means of the formation of peritoneal folds, it provides a pathway for the movement of various blood vessels and the nerves which are supposed to innervate and supply the organ. Next, absorption and dialysis. Peritoneal membrane. Peritoneal lining is a semi-permeable membrane which overlies all the blood and lymphatic capillaries, and hence because of the concentration gradient the peritoneal lining is able to absorb certain solutes and waste product from the blood, and this function of the peritoneum is being used in dialysis. Next, healing power and adhesion. This is in relation to one thing, that is greater omentum. So, greater omentum, whenever there is any infection anywhere in the abdomen, it moves over there and it covers the site of infection, forming adhesion, thereby preventing the spread of infection from that point to the whole of the abdomen. And hence the greater omentum, once again I repeat, is called as policeman of the abdomen. Now, moving on to the last thing, applied aspects. The first applied aspect is ascites. So, I told you that the amount of peritoneal fluid present within the peritoneal cavity is around 5 to 20 ml. The maximum it can maximum, especially in women during their ovulation, is 50 ml. But if at all the amount of fluid in especially in some pathological condition increases further more than this, it leads to a condition here what we are looking at here, the gross enlargement of the peritoneal cavity because of the accumulation of fluid is called as ascites. The most common cause for ascites is liver cirrhosis, a pathological condition seen in liver, especially in alcoholics. Next reasons are, it may be heart failure, it may be tuberculosis, it may be a carcinoma. Now, the fluid which is getting collected here, usually it is a serous fluid where we call it as simply ascites. It may be blood where we call it as hemoperitoneum, or it may be airy one where we call it as pneumoperitoneum. But most common is once again ascites, that is collection of a serous fluid. So what happens? So how are we going to treat it is we have to drain it. The procedure that we use here is paracentesis abdominis. So we are putting up a catheter into it. Usually it is done in the midline right below the umbilical level, or sometimes the catheter can also be introduced all along the flank, and then we will be draining off, that is taking off the fluid from the peritoneal cavity. This procedure is called as paracentesis abdominis. Next applied aspect, we already know this. So this one here in between, this is the right kidney, this is the liver, and the space present here is the hepatorenal pouch of Morrison. So whenever a person is lying in a supine position, hepatorenal pouch of Morrison, it becomes the most dependent area of the whole of the abdomen above the pelvic brim. So this is the pelvic brim. So above the pelvic brim, this is the most dependent area. So whenever there is any pathological accumulation of any pus or fluid or whatever, so whenever a person is lying supine, this is the area where it will be collected, and it is also the most common site of the formation of a subphrenic abscess. Now it is situation when a person is lying supine. what happens if the person is lying, this person is standing, that is upright or in a semi upright position? So if at all in those situations, it is the recto-uterine pouch of Douglas. In case of female, that is a pouch in between the peritoneal lining of the rectum and uterus. In case of females, it is the rectovesical pouch. It is the peritoneal pouch in between the rectum and bladder. So if at all the pus is getting collected in recto-uterine pouch of Douglas, there are two ways of draining it. You need not enter into the pelvic cavity as it is in between the rectum and uterus. So there are two ways of draining it. You can move through the anal canal, or you can drain it by reaching it by means of passing through vagina. So next applied aspect is peritoneal dialysis. I already told you the peritoneal membrane is semi-permeable and has an extensive surface area and is in direct contact with all the blood, which is all the blood vessels. So by means of the concentration gradient, the peritoneum is able to absorb certain solutes and various water from the blood. So in dialysis, this function of peritoneum is made use of. What we do is, so this is the dialysate bag. The dialysate, that is a solute, is by means of a catheter is introduced into the peritoneal cavity. There the peritoneum acts as a filter, and by means of the concentration gradient, all the excretory products like urea and various other things are absorbed into the peritoneal cavity. Then after a certain time, usually 30 to 40 minutes, all this dialysate fluid which we have introduced into the peritoneal cavity is once again taken back into a drainage bag, and this procedure is repeated how many times? Now last applied aspect, referred pain from various organs present in the gut. First of all, what is referred pain? I will give you an example. So this is gallbladder. If at all there is any pathology regarding the gallbladder, we expect that the pain will be present here only. But in any gallbladder pathology, usually the pain apart from being here is also felt at this level. This is what we call as referred pain. Why? Why this happening? Because the pain sensations from the gallbladder, if at all the gallbladder, it leads to the inflammation of the gallbladder, which in turn irritates the diaphragm which is present above. The diaphragm is supplied by the phrenic nerve with root value being C3, C4 and C5. So C3, C4, C5 nerve segments in the spinal cord also supply this area of skin which is present over here. Due to this mismatch in the nerve supplies, the pain from the gallbladder here is sometimes referred to over here. So this is what we call as referred pain. Now let us see where are all the referred pains going from all the various organs. So first thing we already learned, gallbladder and the liver can give rise to a referred pain over here, right over the right shoulder. Next, the pancreas. So this is where the pancreas is located, but the pain from the pancreas also can be felt at the back here. Next, kidneys. Kidneys are usually retroperitoneal organs located somewhere here. Usually, but the pain will be radiating a little bit more onto the anterior aspect also. The ureter, usually the pain usually radiates from groin to loin. So this is where the ureteric pain will be. Next, appendix. Appendix is located somewhere here in the right iliac fossa, but the referred pain from any inflamed appendix usually will be felt around the umbilicus. And suprapubic pains usually are urinary bladder and maybe because of ovaries. So that's the end of my class. Thank you.